right, let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining today. Today's webinar is about using Axio360 to drive continuous cybersecurity improvement across your organization. And we're going to be providing a number of tips and tricks for Axio360 users. So this webinar is designed for people who are already using the Axio360 platform. And some of the features you'll see might be new to you because we have recently made some changes in the assessment interface. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we start. We do have all of the attendees muted to minimize noise, so don't worry about that. If you have a question, please use the Q&A interface on the Zoom webinar interface to ask questions. We have disabled chat for this webinar, and please do ask questions. We'll get to those when we can. If for any reason I happen to disappear because of a power outage or something crazy like that, we do have a recovery scheme in place. So bear with us if you get kicked out. Please rejoin. And with that, we'll get started. My name is David White. I'm the co-founder and president at Axio, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues at Axio. Dale?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dale Gonzalez. I'm head of product, which means the product requirements team and the product development team report up into me, and I end up trying to drive the way that the ideas that Dave and his folks come up with are expressed in the platform. Brendan?
Brendan, I think you might be muted.
Yep, you're 100%
muted. Yep.
There you go.
So I'm Brendan Fitzpatrick. I have spent most of my time trying to build the Axio partner network these days, though I've met several of you on client engagements over the past few years. The other participant throughout today will be the Axio360 platform. So as you probably already know, this is our software as a service platform that allows you to measure, manage, and continually improve your cybersecurity program. So we're going to start off with a quick poll to get a sense of how often your organizations may be conducting cybersecurity assessments. So this could be a full assessment or a partial assessment, but if you could go ahead and answer the question as the poll comes up. Do you do assessments once a year, like your annual physical, or do you do this more frequently?
All right, Sharon, let's end the poll and show the results. Great.
Okay, so a perfectly even split between those folks that are doing it once a year and those folks that are doing it a few times a year. We think that there is an opportunity for you to be conducting assessments, in fact, continuously. And we think that this change in mindset really provides a big opportunity for you to stop having assessments be a task that's put on you and start having it be something that you actually get value from. We think that the interface that we provide will help you baseline yourself, sure, but also select changes to make, track your improvements on that, and then communicate where you are at all times to all interested parties. So next slide. So this is just a quick highlight of the things that we'll be covering in this webinar. I won't bother to enumerate them one at a time, but they'll show up in the recording for anyone that needs to see them. So with that, Dave, why don't we jump right into it?
Great, Dale, thank you. So for those of you who've used the platform, you're probably familiar with a dashboard that looks like this or something like this. This is the dashboard for the C2M2 model. The dashboard for NIST CSF is similar, but somewhat different. And we have another dashboard for RC3 if you're using that assessment in the platform. And you'll remember that at the top center here on C2M2 is your current score. That's the score right now. And I have a prior score on the left wheel and my target future score on the right wheel. I have benchmark data here that shows where I am against the data that Axio has for other people who are using C2M2. 565 is the current median, And you can see that my current score of 681 is in that third quartile, right? We also have this widget, which shows my answers, the distribution of my answers over time. And I can see that this dark blue band is getting bigger, which means I've made some improvements. For every model, we have a way to score on a fine-grained way on the dashboard to show your score by model section. In C2M2, that's by domain. And unique to C2M2, because the Department of Energy publishes a mapping, we have a way for you to get your CSF score from the C2M2 assessment. And you can take that one layer deeper by clicking on that little expando icon there. So one of the things that you might be doing if you're using assessments continuously is sharing them with other people in your organization. And you can do that from the dashboard by clicking on this little people symbol if you're the assessment owner. And if you've done this before, you know that you can click in this window and choose other people from inside your organization to share an assessment with. We have a new feature here which allows you to share the assessment outside your organization. So this is a feature that has to be turned on. And so it's just a little feature flag that we can switch for you. So if you don't have this feature activated, but you'd like to have this feature activated, please reach out to us at Axio, either support@axio.com or info@axio.com, and we will get that turned on for you. So I'm going to type in front of a crowd, which is always dangerous, and demonstrate that if you enter an email address here of someone outside your organization, you'll notice that shows up in orange to indicate that the person is outside the organization. I also have the ability to notify them, CC myself, and add a message, right? So I can just say, hi Dale, as discussed. Now I've invited Dale, and he shows up here as with an email symbol to show that he's outside the organization. I can change his privileges. I can unshare. I can make it so that he has read-only access. You can also change ownership in here, but remember that changing ownership is a one-way trip. You can't get that back. If you're the owner, you're saying you're kissing that ownership goodbye, and you can't restore that. You can't recover that without having that person give it back to you. But you can, this being able to share in read-only mode is another new feature, and that might be really handy if you are sharing the access so that someone can simply view the dashboard or view the assessment results, but you don't want them to be able to go in and change them. So that's a little bit about sharing. Another feature to support collaboration both inside your organization and outside your organization is an assessment workflow feature. So Dale, can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. Let's start by drilling into this assessment. Great. So, and then go ahead and click up there on the title. Now this screen that comes up is the same one that comes up if you click on the pencil icon from the dashboard. And the things that are new are the two lifecycle and tracking tabs. Let's start by looking at the lifecycle. So when you think about sharing an assessment, particularly outside your organization, you may want to coordinate the activity a little more closely than if you're just working within yourself. So one of the things that you can do is now assign someone to take the next step, to move the assessment forward and to sort of structure the activity. And that assignee you pick from the list, and now that person is notified via email, and they're told that they're responsible for conducting this step in the process, which is doing this initial assessment. And when they've finished it, they can say that they have completed that work, and then the owner gets notified again, and that owner then can go ahead and either accept that work or reassign it to someone else. And then there's this evidence review step that can be taken, where all of the information that was gathered is evaluated in the context of the evidence that was collected, and then you can move it all the way through the process again, conducting an internal audit of the results that were captured. And this gives you a good way to coordinate across multiple participants through a structured life cycle. It's particularly useful in the early stages when you're just trying to get that baseline done and you want to make sure you have the best answers possible. And then, David, you'll just click on tracking. As progress is made across the life cycle, You can see the steps that have been accomplished and who accomplished them, as well as the ones that are upcoming, so that you understand exactly where this assessment is. And the place where the assessment is in the life cycle shows up amongst the tags. So you could just sort of see it in the background. Dave, if you'll cancel out of this window, yeah, you'll notice that right underneath demo C2M2 enterprise level, you see self-assessment in progress. So it gives you a way to know, what have you started? What have you completed? What's an evidence review? What's not an evidence review? It's important to remember that it is completely optional. And so if this is something that you're not interested in doing, it's totally fine. And you can continue to use the assessment exactly in the ways that you've been using it before. So another thing that you are probably doing, and one of the differences between our approach to an assessment and some of the traditional ones, is the use of this target. So we're not just looking at where you are, which is what an assessment does typically, but also where you're planning to go, which is one of the ways that you make that leap between something you do for someone else and something you do to help guide your own activities and your own programs. You can set that target, as you probably know, in a number of ways. You can right-click on the individual, or shift-click on the individual level, and it will set it. You can select it from this drop-down up here on the upper right, or you can put the entire assessment into target setting mode by sliding that little slider up next to your profile drop-down. When you're in target setting mode, now the primary interaction with each of these items is in fact setting the target, and the secondary action, that shift-click action, is setting the current level. And you also may notice that all of the progress sliders and the percent completes are in green now to indicate that we're talking about how many targets have been set, not how many current values have been set. So if you're wondering, hey, what have I set targets for, what have I not? A way to see that quickly is to simply put this in target profile mode and then look at the progress bars and the percents complete. Now, this is useful, but it may be difficult if you're setting them individually to drive consistency across the multiple assessments if you have more than one inside your organization. So for that use case, we've provided something called applying a target profile. A target profile is a collection of targets that all get applied to the assessment together in one go. And that can either come from another assessment that you're using. So if you look down at the bottom, you see these are assessments, and any assessment in your organization can have its targets copied into any other assessment, or from these target profiles that we've constructed for the purposes of particular use cases, like the American Public Power Association has a target profile that they use. NERC-CIP has some recommendations that they expect as far as the C2M2, and then the others are simply everything in MIL 1, MIL 2, and MIL 3. When you apply a target profile, you are getting the value of whichever's greater, though, your current level or the target level. So your target score will be the maximum of the two of them. You won't get penalized because someone else is targeting something that's lower than what it is that you yourself want to do. So, hey, Brendan, do you want to talk a little bit more about the use of those targets?
Yeah. So after you've established where you're currently at for a given practice or subcategory, if you're in CSF, and determine where you want to go with this target, the next logical step is to determine how you want to close those gaps. Oftentimes when we're working directly with clients, or when our partners are working directly with clients, the next question is, what are the 3 or 4 activities or work streams that we need to get off the ground in order to start closing this gap? And Dave's highlighting that right now by adding an action item. These action items can be assigned to an individual inside your organization, and you can also assign a date to that. Action items can also be integrated with some external systems such as Zendesk. If you have Zendesk, that's an integration that we could easily set up. While we're on this pane here, you know, when you're doing assessments, it's often the conversations that you have around the practices about, hey, we do this throughout the enterprise, except for in the OT environment, we have a few gaps. Those types of things are what you want to be capturing in these notes to help you, you know, months or years down the road when you want to know why you rated yourself a specific way. Notes are great for that. We've added some new functionality to the notes field. You can now set notes as private, as Dave has shown now. So there's a couple use cases here. Maybe you're using an outside third party to help you with some cybersecurity improvements. but you might not want to share all the notes with them. So you can mark some notes internal, so only your users would be able to see that. Keep in mind, if you're doing video sharing, they will see it. And obviously, if you're one of our partners working with a client, you could use this to keep notes internal to your service delivery team as well. But the notes are a great tool. And in the days of COVID, we found that the way the notes work dynamically, where if you have multiple people logged in, someone could be leading or facilitating the assessment questions, and the other person could be capturing notes, and they show up in near real time on that screen. So that's a great way to collaborate when you're doing these types of improvements. Dave, can you go over and hit the calendar icon on the far left navigation pane? So many of you have probably used assessments for improvement in the past, and I guess that you've probably used Microsoft Excel to build some form of an improvement roadmap. That's a great approach. However, version control can sometimes be difficult, and keeping those things updated can also be cumbersome. So we've created this view here, which we call either the improvement roadmap pane or the Kanban planning board. And it allows you to create as many milestones as you want across the top. Those are the dates. There's a button on the bottom right that would allow you to add additional milestone dates if you cared to. Any practices or subcategories that I do not have a target date for would show up in this left pane where Dave's highlighting. And if you drag those to different buckets, the scores in those buckets should update. So this is a great tool to use if you're trying to forecast, what score you'll be at the end of a quarter or after a work package that you're working on. So this is an excellent tool for that. If you have something like COVID kickoff and you can't complete the work on time, you can easily move those things to the right just by dragging. So it makes the roadmap very easy and very dynamic. The next thing I'd like to highlight is our milestone functionality. We briefly touched on this at the beginning of the webinar, but some of you may have paid consultants in the past to come in and do an entire CSF or an entire C2M2 assessment when you've already done some in the past. And that can, in some cases, be wasteful if you've only pushed the needle up on a few practices or a couple of the domains within a model. And having an assessment of the entire model when nothing has changed except for those few areas, you can better utilize your time and money. So Dave, if you hit this drop-down arrow, these are what are called milestones. When you first create an assessment, we recommend creating one called the initial baseline assessment or initial assessment. And then either on a time-based period or an event-driven, you can create these new milestones and show your leadership or external stakeholders the work that you have done. Dave is showing you how to create a milestone right from the dashboard here. You can also create one from within the assessment as well. So if you don't mind, Dave, let's go back to the PowerPoint real quick. Now, the focus of the features that we highlighted today were all in our assessment and planning module. Keep in mind that there's a lot more to Axio360, the platform, as well as our risk management approach, namely our capabilities around risk quantification, where you can start to understand your organization's unique cybersecurity exposure in dollars and cents. And if you aren't familiar with the new capabilities we've added around control initiatives, where you can start to kind of A/B test different mitigation strategies that you could take towards the scenarios that you may have developed and determine which one of those would offer the greatest risk reduction. So if you're interested in any of those, feel free to hit us at info@axio.com. Dave.
Great. Thank you, Brendan. And thanks all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to spend with us. Not sure if we have any questions. I think, one more feature. I know that some users have had this, have named an admin user. So in your corporate account, if you want to declare an admin user, you can also reach out to us here at info@axio.com. Dale, could you just say a few words about the rights that admin users currently have, and then anything that you can share with us about what's planned in the near future for that?
Absolutely. So the purpose of the admin user is to give at least one person in your organization the capability of seeing the state of all the data that's present. There can be more than one administrative user, so that if you need a primary and a backup, that's something that we can set up. admin users, when they set themselves into admin mode, see all of the assessments, all of the collections that have been created, all of the insurance work that's been done. And they show up here in this list that Dave is highlighting in gray, so they can tell the difference between ones that have been shared directly with them and ones that have been, that they're only seeing by virtue of that admin capability. And it also means that they can change the sharing permission. So if someone says, hey, so-and-so has left the organization and they were the owner and they're not available anymore to go ahead and move it, the admin owner can take over and change that sharing and reassign assessments. They also can toggle the setting of whether external sharing is visible or invisible. And in the future, they're going to be able to see more about who's on the platform for their company, what permissions they have available to them, and confirm things like the corporate name and address and make changes if necessary, and the NASIC code and number of employees, and other things that we can use to drive further refinements and benchmarks.
So Dale, just to review, in this list of assessments you have over here on the left, if it's in blue, it means I'm the owner, right? If it's in green, it means somebody else is the owner, but they've shared it with me. And if it's in gray, it means I'm the admin user, and I have visibility to that because I'm the admin user. Is there any other way to tell that I'm an admin user? I'm not, but
if you were, you would see a little title. There would be a toggle bar up next to your name, Dave White, and it would say whether or not you are in admin mode. So that's how you know that you are an admin user, and it also tells you whether you're seeing these extra assessments or whether you're not seeing those extra assessments.
Great. Thanks for that. Let's see. I'm not sure we have any other questions. So with that, perhaps we give folks a few minutes back before they start their next meetings here. So thanks everyone for dialing in today. We really appreciate you spending time with us. If you have any questions, or if you saw features that during the demo that aren't visible in your instance of Axio 360, please reach out to us and we'll give you some information or help you get those turned on. So you can reach us at info@axio.com. We'll be here for future webinars, so watch your email for invitations and announcements for future webinars. And thank you again for joining us today.